Hello, this is Victor. I'm here with a new video, and this time I want to talk about balance in war games and in games in general. So I know that this is a thing that we always look at, especially in competitive gaming. We always think about balance. We want balanced games. We want both sides to be balanced. We want both players to have the same choices to win. But is this a thing that we can achieve? It does make sense to go for that, but we have to just admit that this is not possible, and we have to find other ways to play the games and other ways to compete. So let's make a look to my rationale, and please feel free to comment, give your opinion, and yeah, and share what do you think about this. I hope you find this video interesting, and now let's start. And I want to start with this picture. So here you have some games that are very balanced. We have on the top and the chess, we have checkers, and we have Stratego, what is another game. These are three different types of games. Of course, checkers, all the pieces are the same, both players are the same, but it's not 100% balanced because normally there is one player that is starting, and this creates an asymmetry. This creates a small imbalance. Same happens with the chess. Whites have a small advantage because they start. And yeah, Stratego is more complex than the other two. We have more type of pieces. There are some pieces that can kill others. The pieces have some strategy. You can deploy as you want. So let's start checkers. Everybody is deploying the same pieces in the same position. Then we go to something more complex, chess. We have different type of pieces, different type of I'm going to say units that they do different things in the game, so they can have different roles. And then we have Stratego. It's complicated, but the table is asymmetric for all of them. All of them have both pieces in both sides. So I will say this is balance. And the way to get balance on these games is because both players have exactly the same. Other board games, traditional board games, always start from the point of view that everything is balanced. They try to, I also here put some traditional hexagonal war games. Risk, in principle, is balanced, but as soon as you start giving the cards and the territories to the people, is completely unbalanced. Then the game becomes unbalanced. There are some territories that are much more favorable than other territories. And then we have pieces, here all the pieces to the same. But then we have also Axis and Allies, or Allies and Axis, another board game, type of war board game. That, yeah, we have different parts, they do different roles. The aim that was for both sides are balanced, but I'm pretty sure that it's not 100% balanced, and there is one side and some pieces that have more advantages. Especially also this happens with some traditional war games that they try to reproduce. This was the old war games. I don't know if they still valid, I guess, in the historical, where you have small tokens. This small token represents different type of units, and you just try to represent a historical battle. They are not balanced, but they always, all these games what have in common is there is no points, there is no, the balance is coming from the starting point that everybody is starting with the same units, or everybody is starting with a setup, a scenario, and it's a fixed scenario. Or, yeah, or on the traditional hexagonal war games where you have a traditional scenario, and you always play the same, or variants of the same game. So there is no points, and the balance is get from a different point of view. And then we go to our games, the games that we like, the miniature wargaming. And here I put, of course, we have Warhammer, SIGMAR, Warhammer, and now we call it also 9th Age, Warhammer 40k, Battletech, Infinity, Kings of War, Mercs, War Machine, Orcs, and yeah, I'm missing here Melifo, sorry. Yeah, a lot of different miniature gamings, and yeah, and I have seen that there are different ways to get balance, and some of them are more balanced than others. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about what are the difference, or what I think the different mechanisms that these games are using to balance the games, or they don't. In most of the times, yeah, some of them they look for balance, but Age of Sigmar, they are not looking for balance anymore. They just look for social, social contract, or just arrive to agreement with the other player. So this is some of the balance tools that we have seen. The first one is player agreement. So you don't have points. This is Age of Sigmar. You just pick some miniatures and you arrive an agreement with your with the other player to do something that is more or less the same for both sides, and you play. And most of the times you don't care if it's balanced. And then you can do scenarios, and you can unbalance in purpose, or you can do different type of gaming. There is other game. Also, you can balance by the number of models. If all the models are more or less the same, and you know that all the models are more or less equivalent, you can balance by number of models. Mercs is working in that way. So each player have the same number of models, and it's supposed that each group or each faction, for each faction, the models are more or less equivalent, and the goods are more or less equivalent. So you play in that way. The most traditional way to do it is to give X points to miniature depending on the power, and depending if it's more strong or less strong, you can give some points. And also you can do fixed builds, means that you give always you fix the army for both sides. So you have an scenario. Imagine that this is a game where you have an scenario and both sides have exactly the same. Space Hulk was working on that principle. You always have the same miniatures on the table. You play different scenarios. Most people will say that it's not balanced. Normally the Genestealers in Space Hulk have more advantage versus the Space Marines. But this is the idea. You always have the same miniatures, and you just play different scenarios with always the same miniatures or the same rules, or with some variations of the rules. You don't have points. You don't have fixed number of models. You just have a fixed build for each scenario. So these are some of the mechanisms we see, and the most traditional, normally the competitive players like more, is the points. And why we like the points? The points have one big advantage. So you just put points to different units, to different equipment. It's giving the freedom to the player to personalize the army. So this is the big advantage of the points. So you have the freedom to personalize the army, and you have the freedom to take the equipment that you want. So in that way, you can place things that can look you can balance things that a priori are not balanced. For example, if you play Space Marines against Imperial Guard, in principle, Space Marines are more powerful. How you balance that? You give less points to the, or you make the Imperial Guard to cost less points, and then you can put more Imperial Guard, and you assume, for example, that that the equivalent of 2 Imperial Guards is equivalent to 1 Space Marines, and you do this type of equilibrium. No, this is how we work in most of our wargames. But this is a fictional balance, because there are so many interactions and there are so many equipment that it's a very hard job and a very hard work to put the appropriate number of points. And even on the situations, these points, maybe some units should cost less and some units should cost more. So this makes the balancing very difficult. Let's start. Let me show you. Here we see some examples of balance. So yeah, you can start with very simple thing. No, you have two factions, for example, of the white and red, and you put exactly the same weight on both factions. You just play with the points. You put exactly the same type of units. For example, imagine Chaos Space Marines against Space Marines, and you put exactly the same units on both sides. So both players have exactly the same opportunities. And then you put very little variances, and you make the game more interesting. But at the end, almost both sides have the same. There are some games that they try to balance in that way, and at the end all the factions have different miniatures, but they have almost the same rules and the same special rules. But then you can start adding more rules, or you can, for example, try to balance Space Marines against Imperial Guard, or you can try to balance a super elite army against a garbage army. And then is when you see the other one with the stones, but you have more stones in one side than the other, but these stones are lighter than the others, because yeah, these models are less impactful in the game. But then you can start adding factions, and you can start adding equipment, and you can start making this complex, and then you have to start balancing different points and different things, and the balance each time is becoming more complex. And we see here that you can go to extreme balance and try to start balancing different equipment, different units, different things. And yeah, but what happens at the end when you try to balance this, that everything crumbles. What I mean with that is games like 40K, games like Warhammer Fantasy, where you want each faction to have their own special rules, where you want each faction to have their own character, where you want to have your special units, your special equipment, where the interactions are very complex, and you see that there are units that interact very well with others, and there are units that are the counter type of others, and yeah, and all these relations start making so complex. You arrive to a situation like that. That to be clear, I don't know where this is coming from, but you arrive to a point that nobody can balance that anymore. And then what happens when you arrive to these points? That you don't care about balance, because you just put some points to the units, and you think that you're balanced. But what happens is that then the people and the players start complaining, because of course there are some codecs that have better units, and in these codecs there are some units that are stronger than others. And it's happening in all the codexes, and it's happening in all this game system where we have points. If you always look, there are so many players that they will look for this combination that is super strong. And each time there is a new unit, they will start looking again for this combination that is stronger than the others and trying to use the best equipment. Because if you only focus on the competitive, there will be always units and there will be always codecs that are stronger than the others. And from my point of view, when we talk about systems that are very complex, where we want to give a lot of character to the different units with the special equipment and all this type of stuff, we want to personalize our characters with this own magical equipment or with own wall gear. This makes this game really complex. Yeah, I know that there are companies that decide to try to balance and keep balancing the game back and forth, like in War Machine, how it's called, Privateer Press. Yeah, trying to work on making the game balanced and making the effort there. What happens is that they sacrifice on personalization most of the times. Some of the feedback I received from these games is that you cannot personalize your characters, and you are missing a little bit the personalization of the characters. A little bit can happen in Malifaux. And on top, these games are played with much less miniatures and much less combos than what we have in 40K. If you compare the number of factions and type of units and different equipment and different personalization that you have in 40K, I don't think we have games that have this level of complexity with so many options. And then we also have the example of King of Wars. I have seen players saying, yeah, I play Kings of War but I guess, yeah, the miniatures or the armies don't have a good personalization. They are not well personalized. Because when you try to make, and the problem is when you try to balance the games and make all the armies more or less the same, you arrive more or less to the same rules for both armies. Both armies will have a garbage unit. Both armies will have an elite unit. And they will be very similar. And then you will tweak a little bit up and down, but not going to extreme, because if you go to extreme, then the balance is becoming more complex, and then you cannot get your objective that is balancing the game. And this is why the reason I think at the end, in Age of Sigmar, Games Workshop give up on trying to balance, and at the end they say, don't put points. Let the players try to balance the game themselves, because can be as well balanced or as well fun, or the same fun to play with points than without points. Even there are some players that when they are practicing or they want to practice some units, they don't count points in 40K. They just drop the miniatures they want to check, they want to see how they work, and they work with that, and they don't care if it's balanced for this casual game. They just want to see how these units perform. Because at the end, to be fair, I'm pretty sure that there are armies that even if they have the same points, they are not balanced, and you will need to start playing. Okay, if you play, for example, if you consider that Elder is a strong army, you should say, okay, for this championship, Imperial Guard will play to 1,800 points, but if you play Elder, you will play with 1,500 points, and this way you can balance the game. But then suddenly, no Imperial Guard will be stronger because you can put more points and you can make mortal combos. So each time, and all the systems I have seen to balance on tournaments, what they do is they shift the balance to one side or the other, and at the end there is always a favorite army or a favorite unit. So my first point is balance. It's against the complexity, and complexity drives balance. If you want, and that means, when I say complexity, means also variety, different types of units. I don't mean complex rules. For example, chess can be quite a complex game to know to play well. The rules are simple and the number of units are very simple. So you have a very established number of units. If you compare this to the other extreme on 40k, I don't know how many hundreds of units, different units we have, with different build-ups, with different equipment, and different factions, with different combinations, with different characters. And I don't think we ever explore all the possible combinations we have out there. So it's much more complex in that way in terms of interactions. Age of Sigmar is also very complex. Each unit has their own identity, have their own special rules, and have their own abilities. They reduce a little bit, they simplify the freedom on equipment. You still have some freedom on equipment, but they simplify this a little bit, especially for the characters, where you have the build-ups put there, and you can choose between 2 to 3 build-ups depending on the character. What I mean here is, if you want a complex variety where every unit has their own character, you have to sacrifice on balance. And if you want a real balance and you focus on balance, then you have to start dropping on complexity and start dropping on variety at the end of the game. So this is my question when we ask for balance in 40k. What do you think? Are we asking for something that is impossible? This is my opinion. I think it's impossible, but I want to know what do you think? When we ask for balance in games like Age of Sigmar, and this is my question, do you need balance to get fun? Do you really need this balance? I know that in tournaments, they look for balance to be fair with all the players, because balance is what we think that is fair when we play. But it's feasible to think that we can balance the game. Or it's better to have a fun game and have a player agreement between the players, and this is a better choice than just start messing up, calculating points, and try to put points to everything and try to find the right balance with using points. What do you think is more balanced? Is using points, or is using player agreements, and after experiencing how the armies plays, you will find that how to balance the games yourself, and you don't need the points anymore to balance the game. And then the last question is, do we really need balance to get fun? If the objective of playing, the objective of having a game is to get fun, because at the end we play because we like it and we get fun playing that, and we want to tell a story of how our army is performing, do we really need the balance? Do we really need these points? Or it's better to have a player agreement and choose and don't care about the points? So these are some points that I want to drop on the table. Please let me know. I've been playing a lot of times, and I always seen, especially in 40k, in Warhammer Fantasy, this is where I have more experience. But even when you play games that Blood Bowl, that you have indirectly points because you play for the players, not all the teams are the same. Even in Blood Bowl, where the complexity is not that high, or Necromunda, even in Necromunda or in the Warhammer, I have seen these gangs are stronger than others. So I will be sure that points is the way to balance, or it's better to have a player agreement or a game director. That's all what I wanted to share in that video. Is just have a chat about balance, and if it's really that important to have balance, and if the points is the best way to balance a game, a war game in that case. Well, there is some choices that are better than that. So yeah, that's all for now. As usual, please comment. I'm really looking forward to see your comments. I'm really looking forward to see your opinion. Like if you like it, and if you dislike, please let me know why you dislike. And it's also important to know why. And for now, yeah, that's all. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you again later. Bye.